just the framing of the question itself, can an iPad replace a laptop, is somehow implicitly saying that a laptop is the be-all, end-all, perfection, final form of mobile computing. It's the standard, and everything else either has to measure up or take second place. So here's the question of the day. What is a laptop? Hey, it's Chris, and I, like you, have seen many videos where people try to replace their laptop with an iPad. For whatever reasons, people are endlessly fascinated with whether or not this can be that. I mean, it's fairly understandable. These two devices do have lots of similarities. And today we're gonna get fully into this discussion, but before we do, you gotta check out my latest course. It's called Pro iPhone Video Essentials. I'm gonna teach you how to use Final Cut Camera and Final Cut Pro either on the iPad or the Mac to go from shooting out-of-the-box iPhone footage with no extra skills or knowledge that looks like this to dialed in professional level video that looks and sounds a lot more like this. Bonus, if you pre-order today, you're gonna get my Learning to Be Productive course, which will help you get more done in less time in the Apple ecosystem with less burnout, completely free. It's linked up down below. So let's start with this question. Why are people comparing iPads and MacBooks in the first place? Well, obviously both of these are marketed as portable computing devices, and they're often aimed at similar user bases like students, professionals, and creatives. And there's some overlapping functionality. The iPad here can browse the web, it can send emails, it can be used for media consumption, and it can even handle some professional tasks like video editing, graphic design, and music creation. Well, surprise, surprise, the MacBook does all of those things as well, also in a portable package, but it's got this built-in keyboard and trackpad. True, those are accessories that the iPad doesn't come with right out of the box, but if you have the Pro, you can get the brand new Magic Keyboard, which offers a very nice, comparable typing and trackpad experience. You might even almost call it very Mac-like. And yet the iPad is undeniably its own thing. It has its own accessories. It's a touchable screen, and it can transform. You're not stuck with the keyboard form factor. Now, the whole comparing an iPad to a laptop thing has been going on for a long time, and the question of whether or not an iPad can replace a MacBook is something that's definitely evolved over time. So I want to go through some of that historical context very quickly. The original iPad was introduced in 2010 as a media consumption device. Steve Jobs got up on stage and he described the iPad as something that was between a smartphone and a laptop. Fast forward to 2015, Apple launches the very first iPad Pro, and that's exactly when Apple began to cater to more professional users with a larger screen, more power, and Apple Pencil support. Then in 2018, Apple came out with an ad that kind of threw everybody for a loop. That's Apple's infamous "What's a Computer" ad that's now been scrubbed from the internet, which all led up to 2019 and MKBHD saying that the iPad Pro is fun to use, but it falls short of being a true laptop replacement. The next year, Linus came out with a video titled, "Fine, the iPad Pro is a laptop." That was the title, but he also said Apple wants you to believe that the iPad Pro is a laptop replacement, but it's not quite there yet. But in 2020, with iPadOS, Apple brings a more desktop-like experience to the iPad, including better multitasking and a more robust Files app, which meant that some of the differences between these two portable powerhouses were evaporating a little bit. 2021, Apple introduces a new chip, the M1 chip, to the iPad Pro lineup. At that point, iPads got a significant boost in performance, which further narrowed the gap between the iPad and the Mac. Now, I'm just setting the stage here. I'm not saying whether or not I agree or disagree with any of these points or perspectives. I just kind of wanted to set the stage for the rest of this discussion. What I really feel like is that this frequent comparison that people make really highlights a shift in consumers' needs and expectations. The MacBook, which existed first, was always powerful and portable, but the iPad Pro in particular wasn't just those things. It was also very adaptable. And because a lot of people out there are they're choosing the iPad Pro, that means that consumers are seeing a place in their lives for a powerful, portable, adaptable, versatile device. So all of this convergence is pointing to the fact that people want their devices to handle a wider range of tasks, which sounds great. Apple comes out and delivers these new features that blur the lines between these two devices, and people get a little bit confused. And hence we have the question, can this replace this? But I really want to flip the script here today and kind of get your mind out of that same traditional rut by asking, not can an iPad replace a laptop, but can a laptop replace an iPad? The Mac lacks a touchscreen. It also lacks a stylus. It also can't be separated from the keyboard. In other words, this form factor is very traditional, which is kind of funny. People get mad when the new iPhone isn't all that different, but then they turn around and like, give me the same features that this Mac has over in this other device, right? Do you see what's kind of weird about that? For something like an iPad to categorically exist, it can't be a MacBook. It's called an iPad. It has a different label. It exists in a different category because it's a tablet, which has some similarities, yes, to other devices, but really has a life and a style, workflows, apps, and an experience all its own. So here's the question of the day. What is a laptop? Typically, a laptop includes a built-in keyboard, trackpad, multiple ports, it's got internal storage, runs a desktop operating system, which can multitask. And let's not forget, I've got Xcode up on the screen here for a reason. It has Pro apps, and not just Pro apps, because Pro apps have started making their way over to the iPad, but full versions of Pro apps. On the surface level, we've got Octane, we've got Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro. Third parties are bringing apps like DaVinci over to the iPad. Sounds great, right? Well, it is great because you can actually get a lot done on those apps, even in their current state. But there's some things that those versions of apps are just inherently lacking versus the same apps and experiences over on the Mac side of things. So with options, the iPad actually does really fit this description of having a keyboard, trackpad, multiple ports, kind of. You can add in a hub. It doesn't have what you traditionally think of as a desktop class operating system, although that's totally contextual, right? Because people who are born using the iPad and have never really used a Mac to anchor a setup, that's native to them. You can plug this iPad not only into something like Apple Studio Display, but it works now with an ultra-wide monitor as well. You can plug in an external hard drive. It does do multitasking, but it's different, all that stuff. It works a little bit differently than a MacBook does. Different how? Largely, it's that it's non-traditional. It's taking some time, but a lot of the features that people have complained about over the years, keep in mind the MacBook's been around a lot longer, are making their way over. They're trickling over to the iPad with its non-traditional, unique form factor. So while the internet seems to be obsessed, and sometimes you can't tell if it's just people creating content or actually consumers at large, but people are obsessed with asking, can this be a laptop replacement? It's actually factual to say that the iPad, the Pro in particular, can be better than a laptop in certain areas like art, media consumption, or even in some educational settings. In other words, it really depends on the framing, number one, and someone's expectations. Now, realistically speaking, Apple's marketing has significantly shaped consumer expectations over the years. When the iPad Pro was originally introduced with these powerful specs and these new accessories, that was really hinting, it was suggesting that maybe this could be a laptop replacement. Even now, the iPad presentations and ads often showcase the iPad being used in professional and creative environments and encourage this belief that it's more than just a tablet, perhaps. Now, just because Apple's out there emphasizing that you can be creative and productive with an iPad in professional settings, does that somehow mean that they're leading consumers astray here as people think about which device they may want to spend their money on? Well, no, because context matters. Even on the artistic side of things, you may have some artists that prefer using Procreate with the Apple Pencil on the iPad, whereas others can't escape from Adobe CC over on the Mac side of things. That's what they're used to, it's what they know, maybe that's even what they prefer. And if that's just how it is on the artistic side of things, imagine how difficult it would be to say across the board in any other category, one device is better than the other. So personally, I think when somebody's asking, which one of these should I get? Can one replace the other? What you're really saying is, which one could I personally, with my context, my experience, my needs and wants, what could I consider to be the best primary device for me personally? And that's the key word, primary device. Because just the framing of the question itself, can an iPad replace a laptop, is somehow implicitly saying that a laptop is the be-all, end-all, perfection, final form of mobile computing. It's the standard, and everything else either has to measure up or take second place. Realistically though, it's a very personal decision and it does not have to be either or. Clearly, Apple's designing their ecosystem, and you could argue, is it better for Apple or consumers to include both of these devices? And what I have to say about that as sort of a final word here to get people thinking is that I put this video together using an iPad and a MacBook. And here's the thing, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed using both, and I found that while I could have done all the research and the editing and the publishing on either of these devices, I actually preferred leveraging the strengths of both. And that's my way of saying it's going to be different for everybody, and I think it's going to remain that way into the future. So as you're doing some research out there, don't let a particular influencer or news outlet push you in a certain direction with the framing of can an iPad, should an iPad replace a laptop, but just figure out what's going to work best for you, for your work, for your apps, for your future, because really it's apparent at the moment that there's not a one-size-fits-all best of both worlds silver bullet on the market right now if you're an Apple customer. Or maybe there is, maybe if you have an unlimited budget, you just get both. Leave me your comments. I wanted to kind of stir up this conversation in a different way, get people thinking a little bit differently about this discussion that seems to be never ending and ongoing. So give me your thoughts. I'm sure there's stuff that I missed here. I really am interested in what you're thinking about this in 2024 and beyond. Reminder, pre-order the new course, Pro iPhone Video Essentials. If you do, you're gonna get my Learning to Be Productive course 100% free, instantly. Check it out, it's linked up down below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Later.